bookaholics, it's Isabel and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be doing my review slash book talk of Supernova. This is the third book. Ooh, that doesn't work, but that's okay. This is the third book in the Renegades trilogy. So the first one was Renegades and the second one was Archenemies. So this is the final book in this trilogy. I've been so excited for this book. I've been highly anticipating it since I finished Archenemies, and I'm so happy it's out. I'm so happy I've read it, and I'm just excited to talk to you guys about it. So Renegades is a superhero series. There's a lot of people who are called prodigies. They have a superhero ability. This could be as mundane as being a very, very good sweeper or being the strongest person in the world. This novel follows two characters, Nova and Adrian, and there are also two sides, the Renegades and the Anarchists. The Renegades are the good guys and the Anarchists are the bad. Nova is an anarchist. Nova is wanting to bring the Renegades down, and in order to do that, they decide that she should become a part of the Renegades. So she infiltrates the Renegades as a spy in order to bring them down. That's pretty much all you really need to know. I really think you should go in blind. I went in blind for this book. I literally just bought it because the cover was beautiful. I'm not a superheroes person. I'm not. I wasn't like all that excited when Renegades is getting so much hype, but the cover was so gorgeous. The covers are what won me over, what made me buy it, and then I read it and I fell in love. Like, this is one of my favorite series of all time. That's what this is. If you haven't read the series, I would recommend going away now because I'm going to talk about what Supernova is about, and it will be a little spoilery. My god, I really enjoyed this book. It definitely lived up to the hype. I really had fun with this, and even though it didn't quite go the way I wanted it to at points, it was still a fantastic book. Renegades and Archenemies are 5 stars. This one ended up being a 4.75. Like, still really high, but I was a little disappointed at some point in this book. It was still a very good book. I had so much fun with this. Just know that I would highly recommend this series. I would highly recommend this book, and I'm just so excited to talk to you guys about it. So if you have not read this, go away now because I'm going to spoil you, and I really don't want to spoil you because it is just a fantastic book. So go read it and then come back and we can talk about it. So bye! Before I get into this, actually, I'm just gonna give you a fair warning. This review is going to be a mess. I made a script and it is a mess. I read it over and I'm like, oh my god, how am I going to follow this? But we're gonna give it a shot. I'm probably just gonna talk about random stuff and this is not gonna be coherent at all, but I'm gonna do it anyways. So let's just get into the book talk. One thing Marissa Meyer is so fantastic at is surprising me. In the Renegades, when it was revealed that Ace Anarchy was still alive, that shook me to the core. Archenemies, there was no like big reveal, but like that ending was done so fantastically. Like, just everything that happened was so action-packed at the end, and it was just amazing, and I could not wait to pick up this book to see what happens because so much happened in Archenemies. It was getting so close to Nova's identity being revealed because Dana's butterfly was caught. She saw that Nova was interacting with Ace and that she was caught and she was stuck in this worm form, and everything ended at that. And then, oh my god, Max. Nova had got the helmet and everything went down with Frostbite and her crew, and Max's quarantine broke down and just everything, and then Frostbite's power was taken by Max, and just all this stuff happened and it was crazy. And I just needed to get into Supernova, and Supernova follows right after Archenemies. The next day, Nova is entering the headquarters. She was so sure her identity was going to be found out, and it was. I was not expecting her identity to be revealed so fast in this book. Like 100 pages, her identity was found out, and I was just not expecting that at all. How could that happen so quickly? And like everything was just spiraling out of control, and I was like, how is this going to fix? Like, it was less than 100 pages. Like, I think it was like 94 or something when Dana's butterfly, like the jar Dana was kept in, was destroyed, and like, I still had that much left to go, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but, oh, my pizza's here! I got my pizza. I'm so excited to get into this, but I'm going to finish my review first. My pizza is my reward for finishing this. Okay, where the frick was I? Nova's identity was revealed. 100 pages in, didn't know what the frick was gonna happen. In this, Ace was in prison, Nova was getting sent to prison. How was everything going to go? I didn't know. And by this point, I didn't know what I really wanted to happen, because honestly, I was so conflicted of whose side I was on. Like, the Renegades have valid points, but the Anarchists had some very valid points too, and like, I didn't know how this was going to go or how everything was going to be fixed. The Renegades, they were starting to spiral out of control in here, especially when Janisa, Frostbite, threatened the council because her powers were obviously taken away. Janisa had actually some valid points. There are some things in like government, like now in our world, where if something happens to you in your line of work, you should be given some retribution, some kind of like acknowledgement that this happened because you're in the line of duty, and like you should be getting something because they lost their power when they're in the line of duty. And Agent N wasn't something they signed up for, which is what Janisa points out, and like, that is so true. And one of the things that was really pointed out, even by Adrian, was how the Renegades were dictatory. That's not a word, but like, it was a dictatorship. Like, it was, because the council always had the final say. They told the Renegades, like the people who were under them, what was happening, and they didn't really get a say in what happened. Like, some of them were not all that agreeable to that, especially after Frostbite and them got their powers taken away. They were kind of iffy if they even wanted it, because the Anarchists had Agent N, and like, the Renegades just weren't open to discussion on this, and I just felt like that was something that really wasn't okay. And I just loved how Adrian pointed this out to this father, but like, you guys are kind of being dictators right now. You're not listening to the people who are under you. So like, that was really done well. And one of the things the Anarchists have always kind of said was there should be equality. Like, in the Renegades, there's not much equality because normal people, they're getting everything done for them. Like, Renegades are building buildings, Renegades are the police, Renegades are all these things. Like, they have normal people doctors, but I'm not really all that sure what other normal people do for work. Like, how are they able to work when all these Renegades are doing stuff for them? That's never expanded on, and I really wanted that to be expanded on in here, but there's so much inequality in the Renegades. Like, there's equality in our society too, but like, it was just so fascinating to kind of read it in this way and like see how the Anarchists had this idea of freedom and equality. Like, they didn't really consider the normal people, but they considered like everyone having a part when they're prodigies, like being able to do what they want. Obviously the Renegades, they had the idea of law and order, which is a good thing. That was one of the things that brought Age of Anarchy so far and kind of destroyed the world, was because there was no law or order. But they needed to have a combination of anarchy ideals and the Renegades ideals. Like, that would have been perfect. And honestly, that's where I thought it was going. Like, I thought Nova was going to be bringing in that kind of idea. She was on both the Anarchist side and the Renegade side. She was gonna be, I thought she was gonna be able to bring these two worlds together. That's not what happened, which I'm kind of disappointed in. Like, I feel like that was a pretty lost opportunity. In this book, when Nova was in prison, she was figuring out what she could do after she got out. She had this big plan, and I thought it was going to be like this big idea of bringing the Renegades and Anarchists somehow together, because she had such a great relationship with Ace, and she had this relationship with Adrian, and she had this relationship with her teammates, and she was infiltrated into the Renegades, and I thought she would be the one who could bring some kind of peace between them. That did not happen. I felt like one of the things that this book failed at was the lost opportunity. This book was going so well up to the end of the first fight. Sorry, my review is like a mess, but it's fine. It was up to the first fight, when the Cragmore prisoners were brought to this big Renegades kind of display of the Agent N. They were going to be neutralizing all the Cragmore prisoners, and then they were going to be executing Ace. And then shit hit the fan when the anarchist plan of getting Ace out and getting all the Cragmore prisoners out, they switched over the Agent N to something else so the Cragmore prisoners wouldn't be affected, and then they were going to get Ace his helmet back. And that all happened, and then this big epic fight happened, and it was amazing. This fight was so well written and so well done, and it was so intense, and it was amazing, and I loved it so much. It was when Ace and all the Cragmore prisoners escaped and went back to the Rejects, which Rejects was such a great addition to this novel because it really showed how the Renegades' inequality of the people who had really good, awesome kind of powers and were able to bring justice and were able to be a part of the Renegades. It really showed how the people who don't, like the person who could make cranes in the first book or all these other kinds of powers that were never given much validity, they were kind of pushed to the side, but because they still had superpowers, they were seen as suspicious because they weren't renegades. So like this whole inequality in prodigies was so well done, and I loved how the Rejects were added to it. But after this big fight and all the Rejects and the Cragmore prisoners and Ace and the anarchists were all brought together, Ace had this big speech. This speech, oh my god, this is when everything kind of derailed and it went somewhere I was not expecting. And it's not that it wasn't good, it was written well and it was enjoyable to read, but like it kind of went off of what I was expecting. Like I was expecting this big kind of bringing together renegades and anarchists somehow. It did not happen. Ace had this grand speech about becoming a god, making these prodigies god, and I'm like, what? This speech was so ridiculous and so out of character, and it just kind of ruined Ace Anarchy for me. Like, it totally ruined him. Ace had this vision. He had this entity throughout this whole series, and it was just broken. And I did not like it. I did not like it because he just became the typical villain, which is not what he was at the beginning. In the Renegades, they always had this idea of the good guy and the bad guy, but that it wasn't always black and white. There was always these shades of gray, especially in Archenemies. Archenemies did this very well with Frostbite and her crew, how they would torture these other prodigies who were seen as the bad guys just because they weren't renegades, and would torture them. That was done well because there are good guys, but there's a lot of corruption that could happen, and that is what was shown in Archenemies. But it's also that the bad guys, they also have good ideas. Like the anarchists had some freaking great ideas that I wish Renegades would have implemented, just because you don't have the freaking best awesome kind of power that can make a difference in this world. Doesn't mean that you're not useful. I really like anarchists part of that, but like Ace Anarchy's speech just completely derailed that. And I hated it. His character was just completely ruined. And then even Nova's idea. As I said before, I thought Nova's idea was going to be some kind of bringing together renegades and anarchists and like the Rejects and all these different people coming together to make a society that would actually bring some equality to this world. But no. Her big plan was, oh, let's just leave. No. For one, that's such a weak point. Nova was never one to run away. She had this plan of taking down the Renegades. She was going to fight for it, was going to fight to get Ace out of prison even when they had absolutely no way to do it. But she was going to fight and fight until the end. And then all of a sudden, let's just leave? What? No. I did not like that idea. It was just pointless. And I felt like she would have a better idea than what she did. But okay. Another thing, after that, so many lost opportunities. The Cragmore prisoners, they were not expanded on at all. Even when Nova was in there, we got to see some characters. Like, she talked to that one character, but that conversation really went nowhere. He just asked about Puppeteer and had some things to say, but it didn't really expand on anything. And they were never really expanded on. Even when they were escaped, they were just kind of in the fight, and that was it. There was like no new characters in this book at all. And if there was, they weren't expanded on very much. They were kind of just there. Another lost opportunity was an international renegades that they brought in after all these people were either killed or they were neutralized. They were just brought in. They didn't do anything. Even like this big fortress that Ace brought up over top of the church or cathedral, whatever they were staying in, they couldn't even break it down. Like, they had all these people come in and they couldn't break down the wall that he created. And I don't understand why with all those different kind of superpowers, but okay. And then there was no real like big fight. Another thing, I'm going all over the place. So this fight, the second fight, the first fight was amazing and it made a lot of sense based on like how much tension there was because the Craigmore prisoners weren't neutralized like the Renegades wanted. Ace was alive and he had his helmet back, so like of course they're gonna fight each other. The second fight though, I didn't really see a point because for one, I was expecting this big epic fight between all the Craigmore rejects and Ace all kind of fighting each other, but like that didn't really happen. Ace just kind of let Hugh in, Captain Chromium, into the fortress because he wanted to torture him because he had Adrian. I really did like how Captain Chromium reacted to Adrian being caught and Ace threatening to kill him. But like the Craigmore prisoners didn't really do anything. It was just Ace versus Captain Chromium. And then it was kind of like Adrian and Nova and like Honey. Honey was another character who completely just changed. And I'm upset about it because Honey was one of my favorite anarchists. And she would not have tortured Nova like that. I'm sorry, but no. I was upset. I was so upset by that just because Nova wouldn't do what Ace said. Honey knew that Nova wasn't someone who would kill easily. Like, she would have before, but she knew that she was changing. But she wouldn't have attacked her like that, especially to kill her. Like, she was intending to kill her. She would not have done that. She would have maybe tried to put her unconscious, but she would not have killed her. That was very out of character, and I did not like it. I wanted Honey to be okay, and she's not okay. She would not have hurt Nova because Nova was like her daughter. So like, what the hell? I'm going off the rails. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. And then Nova and Adrian, they were kind of on the same side again. And like all this stuff was happening. I enjoyed it. It was fun to read, but there was points where I just didn't understand how it was happening this way. I didn't understand how Honey Harper could have hurt Nova like that. I didn't understand how this fight was happening in this way, that it was just like Ace versus Captain Chromium, and like none of the other people who were around were doing anything. They had all these Craigmore prisoners, they had all these rejects in this building with this, and like none of them were doing anything. One of the things I was not expecting. Okay, Phantom. I never really had an idea of who Phantom was. Like, I never had an inkling. So, like, I know some people were expecting him to be, like, Adrian's dad. And I didn't think that because I didn't really give it thought. But the idea that Adrian created Phantom was such a surprise. I really, really, really like that. It was just kind of brought it all full circle. And it made sense to me. I know other people didn't really care for that. But, like, I actually really, really like that. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. The final battle scene, there was so much lost opportunity, like not really executing the Craigmore prisoners. In the fight, they were all of a sudden just gone. Like, Ace was the only one who was there who was fighting everyone. Like, he wasn't actually fighting everyone. He wasn't, because the international people were behind the wall. He only let in Captain Chromium and then Max. Max got himself in because he had Ace's power. That was the whole fight. It was Adrian, Nova, Ace, Captain Chromium, and Max. But there were so many other people there. Like, there was the international renegades, there was the Craigmore prisoners, there was rejects. Like, all these different people were here. And then all of a sudden, the Craigmore prisoners and rejects were gone. Ace was alone. The international people were behind the wall until somehow that was brought down. I can't remember how that was brought down. That was it. It was Ace and Max, which I did actually enjoy that. That was kind of like a full circle kind of thing. Max was the one who brought him down the first time. Max again was the one who brought him down the second time. It was interesting, and like, I can't remember why they put the helmet on Max. I think it was so he could take Ace Anarchy's power a lot more, but then he ended up taking everyone's power in the world, which was so freaking well done. I really, really love that. It just kind of brought everything full circle, and then once they were finally able to save Max, thankfully, everyone in the world had powers. I really did like that because it was so sad that like everyone, every single person didn't have powers anymore. That was sad, and I was like, oh shit. But it was just a lost opportunity, and I was sad about it because there was so much stuff that could have happened. The International Renegades, we didn't get to meet any of them. Like, none of them we got to meet. The Craigmore prisoners, we barely got to see them. The Rejects, we never really get to see them either. Like, there is so much lost opportunity in here, and it's just sad. I'm being really, really hard on this book, but don't get me wrong, I really, really loved it. Let me just talk about some of the things I loved, because I had this like kind of organized where I'd be like more chronicle, but like that didn't happen at all. When we first open up, first few chapters, it's kind of Nova's getting nervous about her identity being figured out. So in this one scene when they're trying to figure out who Nightmare is, they're all in, I think, Adrian's room, and everyone's there, including Dana, in swarm form, and they're trying to figure out who Nightmare is. And when they're kind of discussing it, Dana brings up her own points by landing on Nova when they're trying to figure out who Nightmare is, and they're like, how do they not figure this out, or at least like get suspicious? Like, they didn't get suspicious at all. They were thinking that, oh, do you know who Nightmare is, Dana? And she lands on Nova. How were they at least not suspicious? It made sense that Adrian wasn't because he's kind of blind by her, but like Oscar and Ruby, I think it would have been pretty believable that they were at least a little bit suspicious and like started like kind of putting things together, because there was so much that Nova was around. I don't know how they wouldn't have figured it out, but like it was so fun to read Nova's reaction and be like she instantly like stood up and was like, oh, I know. And she like made up this whole big lie about Nightmare must be infiltrated Renegades. I'll be able to figure out who she is by looking at the people who came into the weapons place that she works at, and like she just created this whole big thing, and like they weren't even suspicious at all. I'm like, Dana literally landed on her. How are you not figuring this out? But I really love that. I loved her terror about it, and like even Honey's comment when they're back at the place where they stay, I can't remember what it's called, but Honey's like, based on the terror on your face, I'm guessing like you're gonna be found out in the next 5 minutes. Like, that was so on point because it was so true. And she did. Dana's butterfly got out from the jar because, oh, Narcissa, the person who was the granddaughter of the person who like gave out weapons to all the anarchists and all the other people who were kind of on the bad side of the Renegades, she was angry at the anarchists because her grandfather was obviously killed, and she wanted retribution and she wanted to get revenge, especially on Nova because she was one of the reasons why her grandfather was killed. But Narcissa kind of came into the picture. She's able to go through mirrors. She found out Nova's identity, was going to use that against her to get the helmet because the Rejects thought they could use the helmet to bring change, because they did not want to be Rejects anymore. They wanted to be part of this community and not have to worry about being suspicious because they weren't on the Renegades. So like, I really, really love that. I really didn't get how Narcissa just dressing up and having the helmet was proof that Nova wasn't Nightmare. I get that the evidence they had on her was speculation, but there was so much against her that she was Nightmare, and all of a sudden, oh, Nightmare's back. She's a mirror walker. We never knew that before. I don't know why, but this must be Nightmare because she's dressed up and she has the helmet. Okay, let's let Nova out. Like, for one, because you know that possibly Nova's not Nightmare, you wouldn't have the execution anymore, but would you really let her go? Would you really just like, oh, okay, you must not be Nightmare because there's someone who's wearing your clothes. Like, okay. Actually, that's kind of a good way to start talking about Nova and Adrian. So Nova and Adrian, throughout this whole series, I've loved them. They've been so cute, and the fact that when Nova started, she did not like Adrian because obviously he was the son of Captain Chromium and Dread Warden, the two council members that she absolutely hated, and she thought Adrian was gonna be the same, and Adrian was always like very cutely fascinated with Nova, and I just adored that, and it was so cute. In this one, I felt like the relationship was kind of pushed to the side for plot. A lot of the reactions in the characters kind of felt maybe not forced, because I feel like some of the reactions were genuine and would actually be the reactions they had, but like some of them just didn't quite make sense. Like, I get that Adrian was angry. I expected him to be angry once he found out that Nova was actually Nightmare, but I felt like he would have more conflicting feelings than he actually did the first time he learned that Nova was Nightmare. But in here, he finds out like 100 pages in, instantly angry, and he doesn't really do anything to help with the execution. Like, I feel like he would actually like fight to make sure she didn't die, because obviously he's in love with her. So like, I just felt like his character was kind of pushed back. Like, obviously he was hurt that Nova was actually Nightmare and he felt like everything was fake, but he wouldn't want Nova to die. I just felt like he would have heard more of her side than he did. He goes to visit her in Craigmore and he's pretty much there just to say that, oh, you better tell us your secrets because you're gonna be executed if you don't. And he doesn't actually like try to hear her side. Like, she obviously, when she's telling her side, she's lying. She's telling him, I'm innocent, I'm not Nightmare, I'm just Nova, I'm Insomnia. I'm not this person who you think I am. I don't know what I'm saying. I do feel like Nova's reactions were kind of pushed down too. Like, she was always like a planner. She was always someone who was ahead. And in this one, she gets caught, but then Narcissa acts like she is Nightmare and Nova is let go, and then she's kind of brought to the rejects, and like the plan she comes up with was like that stupid plan about like escaping and leaving and building their own community. Like, that was stupid. Like, I feel like after that, like, she would have been more into kind of bringing the Renegades and Anarchists together, because she's getting so close to actually getting Ace Anarchy back on her side. She's also still conflicted about maybe wanting to be a renegade and like making a difference, and like I thought she would have wanted to make a difference. Like, I always felt like that was her plan. She agrees with some of what Renegades is about, because she's starting to like turn and become more like them, but she didn't really come up with any kind of plan that made sense. I don't know what I'm saying, but like her character, I felt like she would have been more gung-ho, not just of taking down the Renegades, but making a difference, because she always had the idea that Renegades shouldn't do everything. Everyone should have some equal part in our community. Like, normal people should be able to be contractors and be able to build buildings, not Renegades do everything. So she always had that idea, and I was always thinking that she would help the Renegades figure that out and be able to make more equality, but that doesn't really happen. One thing, I didn't really talk about this before, but one thing is that at the ending, like after everything's done, Max is safe, he no longer has power, but everyone else in the world now is a prodigy, nothing changes. In the epilogue, don't get me wrong, the epilogue was amazing, it was so surprising, I'm going to talk about this later, but nothing changes. The parade happens, the Renegades are still on top. The Renegades are still made to be this big celebrities, even though everyone has powers now. The Renegades are still on a pedestal. That doesn't change. And the Renegades don't seem to learn anything. Like, hopefully we're gonna be having a spin-off. Like, hopefully, because I need to be in this world still. But like, there's so many unanswered questions. First, where are the Craigmore prisoners? Are the Renegades going to be hunting them down and going to neutralize them? Did they learn anything? Is Agent N not going to be a thing anymore? Or are they going to make it again? They obviously know how. They can. I don't know if maybe Max not having a power, maybe that will make a difference. But like, what are they going to do with the Craigmore prisoners? Are the Craigmore prisoners reformed all of a sudden? I don't know. I just feel like the Renegades didn't really change. Another thing, Ace Anarchy killed Nova's parents. I know some people actually were expecting this. I was not expecting this, mostly because it just didn't fit. It just seemed to come out of left field. It kind of followed how Ace's character all of a sudden was like, let's be gods, let's do this, let's do that. But like, it didn't fit his character before that. Yes, he killed Nova's parents because they went to the Renegades and said, this is his weakness, get his helmet and then he'll be destroyed. Okay, so he kills them for that. It just didn't fit. And I didn't like it. Possibly I don't like it because Ace was always this person who was against the Renegades, but he always had like this vision that I agreed with. Like, there was parts that I didn't, but there was also parts that I really did agree with, like the equality and all this stuff that he wanted the prodigies to not be persecuted and to be respected, and they could still do what they wanted. They didn't have to be superheroes. They didn't have to protect they could just do their own thing, but with a little bit of law and order. But like, the Renegade shouldn't be on a pedestal. He just became a typical villain, and that just didn't fit his character, and I really didn't like it. And it kind of just like flipped the whole thing. Like, Nova was always against Renegades because they didn't protect her parents. But then she learns that, oh, yeah, they were actually had someone at their door protecting her, and she ended up being Lady Indomitable, Adrian's mother, and she was killed the night that her parents were killed. And so it was like, oh, the Renegades were always protecting me. It was Ace who was the enemy. And all of a sudden the Renegades just seemed to be like, oh, the Renegades were the good guys the whole time. Even though they are corrupted and there needs to be change. It seemed to be like, oh, they weren't the bad guys. It was always Ace, and now it's okay. And it's not okay because there's still so much that needs to be fixed. The epilogue does seem to hint that it's going to fall into the same patterns. The Renegades are going to be still on top. There's still going to be the inequality. There's still going to be all this stuff. And I do like that. It's just, it's not addressed in this. And it just seems this whole battle, this whole thing with Ace Anarchy, it didn't change anything. Ace is just dead. The Renegades are still on top. And there's just doesn't seem to be anything changed. Because honestly, the Craigmores are escaped. And I'm expecting that the Renegades are going to start hunting them all. So I only have 5 minutes left. So I've been talking a lot. Let's talk about that epilogue. Oh my god, the epilogue was my favorite, absolute favorite part, and it shook me to the freaking core. It's revealed Evie, Nova's sister, who she thought died when she was a baby, is alive! Oh my god, and she is Magpie. I can't remember what her power is, but she's able to like detect stuff very easily. Evie and Nova actually talk to each other in this book, and they didn't even freaking know they were siblings, and like, it just shook me so much. Like, Evie is freaking alive, and I'm living. I'm so excited for that. Like, that surprised me so much. Oh, another thing I want to talk about before this minute goes. So, Adrian's identity. Like, it's been built up so much. Like, there's been so much hype around Adrian's identity. He is the Sentinel. He is the, I can't remember the word, but he is a vigilante that the Renegades wanted to be not killed off, but just to be stopped. His identity is revealed, and it's very anticlimactic. Did I say that right? I don't know. He was protecting his dad in this epic battle, and he was protecting his dad because his dad lost his powers. He just revealed himself. I can't remember if like Dread Warden was like, oh, who are you or what, but like all of a sudden it was like Adrian just revealed himself, and then his parents are kind of mad. But like, that was it. That was the whole reveal. Even when Nova kind of figured it out, she learns that Adrian is a Sentinel, and it's pretty much like, oh, you were him the whole time. Okay. I don't know. It wasn't how I expected it to be. I expected it to be like this big reveal, and it wasn't. And it was kind of anticlimactic. I was expecting their identities to be revealed when they're like fighting each other, and it being like this big like shock that Nova was Nightmare and that Adrian was the Sentinel, but it just wasn't. Honestly, this book was still amazing. I still absolutely loved it. I got a lot of what I wanted to happen in this book, and I really enjoyed reading it. It was a lot of fun, and I had so much fun reading it. It was mostly the beginning and middle. I absolutely loved the fight scene. The first fight scene was amazing. Everything was amazing. Up until Ace's speech. That speech, I swear, it was terrible. It kind of hurt the book a bit because it just kind of ruined Ace Anarchy's whole character. But I have less than 1 minute. I think that's all that I wanted to talk about. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below how you thought about Supernova, and I'll see you guys next video. Bye!